Well, hello, how are you? Happy hump day. It is Wednesday, March 4th. Where is the time going, right? So today, the question is, which role model overcame a challenge that you are now facing that could be inspirational to you? And it may not be that this person wanted to go into the legal field, but that they overcame something totally challenging in their life that maybe produced fear, anxiety, made them anxious, but that you looked at them, and when you might not have known the story, but when you heard a story about what they faced, it was so impactful to you, and that they still lived their life and they overcame it. They still moved forward. They still went to work every day, and maybe in some instances even started a business of their own. When I look at a lot of my aunts and uncles who were not a generation ahead, older than me, but 2 generations older. They were my great aunts and uncles. When I look at them, and some of them came over from Europe when they were in their early 30s, and they felt that the U.S. was the land of opportunity, where in the countries they came from, they weren't allowed to do certain things. I know in my grandfather's birth country of Germany, my own cousins told me this when I was there in the mid-'80s, when I went to visit them and stay at their home. And my younger cousins, my older cousins said that you're basically told what you're going to do or be. And that was his generation. He's a generation older than me, just 1 generation. So his mother was my grandfather's sister. So I stayed at his home there. And so I understood from hearing stories from especially my relatives that were a couple generations ahead, that they didn't have a lot of choices. Yet they worked in factories, a lot of my family members did, and saved money on the side to then do and go after their dream. So, hey Jamie, hey, I wanted to say I'm glad that you're able to see 2020. I saw your comment, and I haven't had a chance to comment on it, but I'm so happy for you that you came out of it successfully, and now your vision is corrected. So there you go. That's a great thing. It's a scary thing to go through, but I'm glad that it was successful. So kudos, girl. So who is that person? Inquiring minds want to know. For me, you've heard me talk about my aunties who were in the legal field, but I didn't ever talk to them about it, which is very strange, but I just felt they were in it so long that it was something they enjoyed. And so much of it was before computers, let me tell you, that's why I didn't go into legal straight out of high school, because I felt that when you're typing on a typewriter, you couldn't make mistakes on the legal documents. You had to start over because somebody could challenge that. And so when computers were developed, and all the offices, the business owners, and everybody was starting, and they were more affordable. People just jumped on the bandwagon, and that made it so easy for the legal field, much more sane to do your work, and get your documents done and not have to start all over. And you had to be so accurate with your typing, and I was, but I didn't want that pressure. But once computers were in place, that made me want to go into it. And I thought about my aunts and that they were successful in it, and I decided to jump into it. But I tell you, the person that inspired me the most was my maternal grandmother, Frida. And she had a hard, she always talked about this, but wouldn't go into tremendous detail. I found out from other people what those tragedies were in her life, and she didn't want to talk about it and dwell on it. She was an extremely positive person and didn't want to dwell on the negative. She had tons of it in her life. And my grandfather, her husband, had developed in his 40s multiple sclerosis. It's in our family. It's in our genes. And my cousin has it right now. She's a couple years younger than me. So my grandmother dealt with a lot of hardship. Loss of 2 children at 6 months old, 2 twin girls. And I look at her and how she survived it. And I would see this sweet, nurturing grandma and think, if she could survive, so could I. And I had a similar tragedy in my life as well. And so when and my grandmother had already passed, and how I wished that she was there to see me through it. But she wasn't, and my faith saw me through it. But who is that person for you that you look at and you go, well, if they could do it, I could do it? It may not be the same path, and usually it's not. I have an auntie in New Jersey, that lost her first husband when he was 35 years old. And then her second husband at 61 years old. And she's been a widow for, 26 years or so. And lives with my cousin, the one who has MS in New Jersey. So I look at them and surviving and trying to enjoy life and trying to move forward. And I ask, what can stop me? Not a whole lot. And that's what I want you to reflect on, is what can stop you? You've already been through hardships in your own life. You've already climbed mountains successfully. So why should this be any different going into the paralegal field? In fact, compared to some of the mountains you've already climbed, this is small potatoes. While it is a mountain, it can be a barrier, feel like a barrier. It doesn't even compare to some things you've already overcome. So we have to keep those things in perspective. Keep the reality of that in perspective. So I'd love to hear who your people are who have inspired you, even if it's not a relative. It could be a writer. Writers have inspired me. Poetry has inspired me. As a teenager, it inspired me by somebody named, if I have this right, because it was a long time ago, Peter McWilliams was a poet that I just loved. And I wrote a lot of poetry, which was a way for me, of journaling regarding some hardships or woes, during that time of my life. And that was helpful. So I would love to know who is that person, or there could be, again, not a relative, or is it your faith? For me, that's the foundation, and that's what got me through tragedies, loss, non-support from people that I thought would support me but didn't. It's kind of commonplace, right? Yeah, I agree, Jamie. Jamie says, in times of strife, I always believe that 1 year from now, my life will be better. I hold on to my faith. When I was, how old was I? Let's see. It was 1974, and I found out that I was pregnant and I was a single mom. And so the first person I told and cried my eyes out with was my grandma, the grandma I just talked about. And I felt that my child was a gift, and she's now let's see, this year she'll be 46. And so I can't do the math, but I was born in 1952, and I'm 67 now. And so while my age at that time might not feel young, I was still young in my head. And it was all of it is in God's plan. Yeah, I agree with you, Jamie. Faith in God, prayer, and giving it all to Him, because He has a plan. I always say this to you all, a plan and a purpose for your life. Jeremiah 29:11 says so. And I think one of the most wonderful series of verses to read is in Proverbs 31, but also Proverbs 139. And I could go on and on with quoting, just listing what was impactful to me, but those are great places to plunk yourself down. And Proverbs is a great book to read, as well as Psalms, because Psalms is a lot of it is David pouring his heart out to God. But David was a majorly imperfect person. So instead of beating ourselves up, I realize and I reflect on who King David was and how imperfect he was, yet he had God's heart. And so God doesn't expect that from us. But He has something very special for each one of you listening now, and everybody who listens and watches on replay. He has that purpose for you. It may be the legal field or it may not be. He's placed it on your heart. So if you ask Him, and I said this to my grandson recently, who is in his senior year of high school, you ask God to show you what you're meant to do, where the people you're supposed to contact or be in contact with. It's by no coincidence. That was weird. I got a message from Verizon just now that God will answer your prayers. It may not be the answer you want, or it may be so, but be open to the answer that He gives you. He may be very intentional. He may be protecting you. I always prayed in the interviews, sitting in the car. I would pray before I went in and say, whatever you want, because I know that if you shut this down and I don't get an answer, you don't want me there. And I would find out later that it wasn't a place I wanted to be. So don't want it so badly that you end up in a place that you don't need to be. Okay? Jamie says, anyone I see who has much more to deal with than I do is an inspiration. There's no one person. That's a great answer. Yeah. And I think about, Cooksville right now in Tennessee. And I go to visit my cousin in the northeastern corner of Tennessee near Bristol, and which is right on the Virginia border. And I think about them going through the tornado thing right now, the devastation. And I lived in Oklahoma for 16 years, and you talk about Tornado Alley. We had one come up right over our house. We lived on a hill. We were in the northeast corner of Oklahoma, 40 miles outside of Tulsa. So it starts to get rolly there. And we lived on a hill, a big hill, with a pretty high elevation for Oklahoma. And that tornado came up and bounced off the hill, and the tail was hanging down and just clipped off about 8 oak trees in our side pasture, and took the not pillars, but little columns, they weren't big columns, off the front of our house, and just like they were matchsticks. So we were and my mother was visiting then, and we were all in the hallway, and I could feel my ears popping. It's very frightening. So, and my husband was there for work for all that time, and so we were, we needed to be in Oklahoma. Beautiful country, beautiful, but it is in part of Tornado Alley. So I really feel for the people that experience this. Moore, Oklahoma had a similar tornado hit and devastated that city, which is closer to Oklahoma City. So anyway, yeah, I love to hear who or what is your inspiration. And knowing that God loves me in spite of my mistakes, in spite of my errors in judgment, in spite of no judgment, that he just made something glorious out of my mistakes, and that he loves me in spite of everything, so that he wraps his arms around you in spite of everything. And it's a beautiful, beautiful picture, right? And when I think about the verse that says he will cover me with his wings, that I'm nestled in like a little bird under the wings of God, that I love picturing that when I feel particularly lonely or stressed out, or, you know, there are negative feelings or negative self-talk, that I remember whose I am and whose you are. So, so what is the challenge when you're trying to get into the legal field is it's multi-dimensional. But the way I went after it is I dove in, but that's my personality, to dive in. And I said to my husband before I dove into the legal field, how hard can it be? Well, it was multi-dimensional, and I just had to go after one thing at a time and start realizing what I was learning and writing those things down. That's what I want you to do, that you do that research you need to do, and it can feel overwhelming, but when you break it down, instead of looking at the big picture, then you start to learn piece by piece, and it's like putting that maybe a 500-piece puzzle together, and you start to see it come together. And you keep that notebook, which I have over here. Keep the notebook with you, and have one just for building your knowledge and what you've already accomplished, what you've learned. But, you know, segregate those pages into folders. Like if you're learning something about a particular area of law, then put that in a folder for that area of law so that you can refer back to it. And what did you learn? And then pat yourself on the back for every step you take. I had to do that in the law firm because I was blessed to have an attorney that took me under his wing, and a paralegal who was a great mentor. But as I have often said, that's rare. And so remembering that when it got tough, or when I didn't understand something and I felt, to be honest, like an idiot, that I would give myself that space, you know, to not be negative towards myself, you know. Yeah, it's Jamie, it really is what we do in the legal field with, when I did that stuff, and I would categorize my notes into folders and take everything I still do it today with ideas that I have, or ideas for videos and things for you guys. I've got to have a notebook and write things down, otherwise I'll lose the thought. But this goes for the legal field too. It's tracking, you know, I'll have a legal pad with my to-do list on it. I don't do it on the computer, but you can. But I never toss those out, you know, and I want to make sure that I keep those and I date them, and I make notes to myself on them. They look like the to-do list looks like a royal mess, but that's a work in progress, and I cross out the task that I've accomplished, I've completed, and they're done. Again, you know, that organization is something that I learned how to do eons ago as a secretary and as a receptionist when I was given duties to do in the first law firm. And I would just, have that in front of me as proof of what I was working on and cross that out. And my paralegal mentor was inspirational to me. I had a lot of good skills already. I needed to improve on some of them, learn new ones. And there were a lot of things about software that I did not know because I had a Macintosh computer at the house. And the IBM PC was way behind the Macintosh. And I was aghast at how, law firms were using IBM PCs because they were all using WordPerfect at the time. Most law firms have totally switched over to Microsoft Word because they had better software that they could use with it. And their clients were using Microsoft Word instead of WordPerfect. So yeah, it's a great idea. Jamie says, I've always kept copious notes each time I started a new job. When the attorney is coming by or you're going in the office, it's like pen and legal pad. It's like attached to us, pen and legal pad. And you're writing down, they might be just spewing off what they want you to do. And they're saying this is in the blah blah case, and you're writing down the name of that client of the case first, and you're putting down the date that you're taking the notes. And it's as if I always felt that if there was a question as to when did I give you that direction, when did I give you that task to do, I've got it right on there, the date, and so my paralegal mentor, I did not know a thing about how a file should be set up. I didn't know how it should be set up on the computer for the legal field. So I had to learn a whole new way using an IBM PC, which now they copied what a Mac computer, how that was designed with pull-down menus. We didn't have pull-down menus. There was no such thing with IBM PCs back in 1990 when I broke into the field. So eventually that they copied the Macintosh, and it made life a lot easier. So there were difficulties with learning that. I couldn't get over how antiquated it was, but that changed over a few years, and then life was easier. And shortcuts to do things I had to learn. So I learned some shortcuts, taught myself some shortcuts that the paralegal did not want to be involved in. But still, she was very inspirational to me. And other paralegals who broke in the way I did with no 2-year degree or certificate, they were inspirational to me. My aunts who broke into the legal field had none of that. Doesn't matter how long ago it was, it's still done today. So that's why I talk about the different ways to break in. Everybody who breaks into the legal field and is successful just is inspirational to me, that they made something, they started off green and then they built a career. That's inspirational to me. Many people, no matter how the person broke in, 2-year degree, certificate, or other degrees, that maybe they still have an impact on the legal field. They're still valuable. Or a high school diploma, period. It's all valuable. So I wanted to just talk about the people who inspire us, and people that are in my class right now that have landed interviews. Just recently, just in the past week, I had a student that landed two interviews. Monday and Tuesday went on an interview, and is not letting anything stop her. But she's on her path. The quickness of your path is an individual thing. But I don't want you to let anything stop you from going forward. Anybody listening right now or on replay, that how fast you go into it, this is you're in your lane. And your lane is an individual lane. And you're not in a race against anybody else. Okay? It may feel like that sometimes. And we'll put a lot of pressure on ourselves. But you've got to give yourself some space, and you have to hold yourself accountable for just going after it and how long or how quickly you do it. It's up to you. Totally up to you. I didn't want any kind of pressure put on me either. Well, hello, Sashiwa. Let me know if I'm saying your name. That is a beautiful name. Good to meet you. So I'm going to close it out. I've talked long enough, and I got to get back to work. And again, Jamie, I'm glad that you're doing well. And I'll be posting more training in our group, by the way. So hang on for that. Stay tuned. And everybody, just understand that I have a website that you should go visit, because there are complimentary items there for you. And there's a YouTube channel as well. So the website is called Paralegal Coffee Talk, just like this page, .com. Okay? So go there and look at the top and get the 19 alternative paralegal careers list. Also, get the free chapter of my book, Legal Break-In, or you can get the whole book. There's one tab for the free chapter, or there's one called Legal Break-In. And then the Goals Journal. Those 3 items are complimentary for you. Yeah, thank you, Jamie. And let's see what else. Oh, the YouTube channel is Paralegal Career Mastermind. So go visit over there. Lots of videos. And again, when you're watching those videos, take notes. And categorize your notes into folders, so that if you're looking at a video regarding personal injury law or estate planning law, that you put those notes into a folder. Just get the highlights from the video as you're sitting there watching, and put those in folders. You never know how that will help you down the road. You won't remember everything you're watching, so don't depend on your memory. That's a very good tip for the legal field, because I never depend on my memory. I'm always using a yellow legal pad or my notebook for non-legal matters. But when I'm coming up with ideas for you guys, I'm using this. When I'm at work, I'm using a yellow legal pad and dating that. But start getting into paralegal mode, into mindset, so that that will be your life. That you will not only do research and be a detective and finding answers for your attorney, but you will be managing all your cases that you have, and that will be on you. And so, or any instruction the attorney gives you, you have to use your yellow legal pad, date it, and you write all that down. So get into that habit of, when you're doing research online, that you're writing things down that you find, those wonderful nuggets that you find, and bookmark websites that you come across that has a lot of good information. Bookmark it in your browser. Chrome has a great bookmarking system, but so do other browsers. Get used to doing that, okay? All right, so that's it for today. Have a great one. Thanks for being here, everybody, and I will talk to you in tomorrow's video. Take care.